Tyrese didn't usually take the long way home. It was a dusty back road lined with overgrown weeds, old chain-link fences, and the occasional empty beer can rolling in the wind. But that Tuesday, with his backpack slung over one shoulder and his earbuds dead from battery, something pulled him in that direction. It had rained earlier, so the road was speckled with puddles. His sneakers squished through the soft dirt as he walked, eyes fixed ahead. That's when he saw the car. It was a black luxury sedan, sleek and low, like something from a movie. The left rear tire sagged low to the ground, deflated completely. The hood was popped, and next to the car stood a man in his late 50s, wearing a neat gray suit and expensive-looking shoes now splattered with mud. He held a tire iron in one hand and a look of mild frustration on his face. Tyrese hesitated. The man glanced up, eyebrows raised. "You lost, kid?" the man asked. Tyrese shook his head. "Nah, just walking home. You ever changed a tire before?" "On my uncle's truck." "Yeah," Tyrese replied, already stepping forward. The man chuckled. "Well, this one's a bit fancier than a truck, but I won't turn down help." Tyrese dropped his backpack and crouched by the wheel. The lug nuts were stuck tight. "You got a wrench with better grip?" The man opened the trunk and pulled out a small toolkit. Tyrese got to work. His fingers were cold and stiff, and he scraped his knuckles twice, but in less than 15 minutes, the spare was on. The man wiped his hands with a cloth and looked impressed. "You're good at this." Tyrese shrugged. "I help my uncle at his garage sometimes." "Well, I owe you, Tyrese. That's your name, right?" He blinked. "Yeah. How'd you know?" The man smiled. "Saw it on your backpack tag." "Oh, right." The man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in a handkerchief. "I don't carry much cash, but I want you to have this." He handed Tyrese the bundle. Inside was a simple wristwatch, old-fashioned, gold-toned, with a cracked leather strap and a faded face. It ticked quietly, still running. "It's just a watch," the man said, "but it's always brought me luck. Had it with me during my first big deal, kept it when I left home at 17, or at the day I met my wife. I think it's time it found someone else." Tyrese stared at it, unsure. "Seriously?" he asked. "You want me to have this?" "I insist," the man said. "You earned it." Tyrese fastened it around his wrist. It fit perfectly. The man offered a handshake. "Name's Mr. Landon." "Thanks, Mr. Landon," Tyrese said. "You sure you're good from here?" "Positive." "Go on. Get home before it rains again." Tyrese jogged the rest of the way, unsure if the strange gift was generous or just weird. But he kept the watch on. Something about it felt grounding, solid. That night, Tyrese sat across the dinner table from his mom, poking at leftover spaghetti. She noticed the watch almost immediately. "Where'd that come from?" she asked. "Helped the guy with a flat tire. He gave it to me." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You know you're not supposed to take things from strangers." "I know," he replied, but he wasn't weird or anything. Just grateful. She let it go, but her concern lingered in the air like a flickering light. The next day at school, things started to shift. Tyrese's math teacher, Mr. Owens, pulled him aside after class. "You know, I submitted your name for a summer STEM program at Wilford Tech. They just emailed me, said they'd like to interview you for a scholarship slot." Tyrese blinked. "Seriously? You've got potential," Mr. Owens said. "They must have seen your test scores." Tyrese nodded slowly, his fingers brushing the watch under his sleeve. Later that afternoon, while helping his uncle rotate tires at the garage, a local news crew passed by. One of the reporters stopped for a quote about community youth programs and ended up interviewing Tyrese. It aired that night. His mom almost dropped her tea when she saw him on screen. "Boy, you're on the news," she said, half proud, half in disbelief. Tyrese could only smile. I guess things are just working out." That night, as he lay in bed, the watch ticked softly on his wrist. He couldn't explain it, but the past 24 hours felt different, brighter, as if the air had shifted in his favor. But even then, deep in the pit of his stomach, a question began to form. Who was Mr. Landon, really? And why did a man with that kind of car, that kind of suit, carry around an old broken watch for luck? It had only been 3 days since Tyrese helped Mr. Landon on that muddy back road. 3 days since he'd fastened the strange, ticking watch around his wrist. And yet, it felt like the world had shifted on its axis. He wasn't superstitious, not really. But how else could he explain it? On Wednesday, he got called to the principal's office, not because he was in trouble, but because a local nonprofit had selected him as one of 5 students from the district for a mentorship program with a city engineer. He hadn't even applied. On Thursday, an envelope arrived at his house addressed to his mom. Inside was a letter informing her that Tyrese had qualified for a partial scholarship at St. Mark's, one of the best prep schools in the city. His name had been submitted by an anonymous recommender. They were offering a tour and financial consultation next week. By Friday, even his mom couldn't pretend it was all normal. "I don't know what's going on," she said, stirring rice in the kitchen. "But I'm waiting for the catch." Tyrese leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "What if there isn't one? Life doesn't just hand you things like this, baby," she said softly, not without expecting something back. He didn't have an answer for that. But when he looked at the watch, snug on his wrist, something in his gut stirred. It still ticked steadily, its face scratched but readable, like a relic from another time. And that's when the dreams started. They weren't nightmares, just vivid, blurry flashes. A man walking down a hallway. A courtroom. A woman crying at a dining table. Sometimes he heard a name echo in his ears as he woke. Landon. But that was the man's name, wasn't it? Mr. Landon. Only, why couldn't Tyrese find anything about him online? He tried. That weekend, when his mom worked a double shift at the diner, Tyrese borrowed her old laptop and started searching. Landon businessman black car luxury suit, he typed. Then Landon tire flat suit black sedan. Nothing. Just celebrities, real estate agents, a guy who owned a tire shop in Oklahoma. Next, he looked for news around that backroad, accidents, crimes, missing persons. Again, nothing. But when he searched for Landon plus watch, something strange popped up. An article from 10 years ago. Disgraced investor sells off properties after Ponzi allegations. The man in the photo was older than Mr. Landon, his hair grayer, his face more drawn. But the eyes. Tyrese swore they were the same. And the name below the headline? Thomas Landon. Tyrese leaned closer, scrolling down. The article said Landon had been a rising star in private equity, known for building up failing companies and flipping them for millions. But then came the allegations, misused investor funds, phantom deals, court cases. He had disappeared from the public eye around 2016. And according to one section, during his peak years, he was always seen wearing a gold-faced watch with a cracked leather strap. Tyrese's heart thumped in his chest. He stared down at his wrist. Same watch. His hands trembled slightly as he clicked deeper, reading everything he could. The court cases were dropped. No official charges. Still, his name was dragged through the dirt, and he'd fallen off the radar. Had he changed his identity? Was he laying low? Why had that man, this former mogul, been stranded outside his neighborhood last Tuesday? And why had he given Tyrese the very thing that once defined him? The next morning, Tyrese asked his mom casually if she knew the name Landon. She frowned but said no. He let it go, but the name haunted him all day. So did the memory of the man's slight smile when he handed over the watch? What was it he had said? "It's always brought me luck." I think it's time it found someone else. Tyrese's stomach turned. Was this man trying to get rid of his past? Or pass it on? That afternoon, he biked back to the place where it all happened. The bend in the road looked the same. No skid marks. No signs of a struggle. No trace of the luxury car. He stood there, squinting down the stretch of road, feeling like the answers were just out of reach. Suddenly, a voice behind him made him jump. "You lose something?" Tyrese turned around quickly. A man in his 60s, wearing a flannel jacket and holding a gas can, was staring at him from his porch across the road. No, sir. Just looking." "You ain't the first," the man said. "Since the tire blew out, there's been folks nosing around." Tyrese stepped closer. "You saw it happen?" The man nodded. "Yeah. Fancy car, real clean. Blew the tire, pulled over, then some kid helped the driver out." Tyrese swallowed. "That was me." The man raised an eyebrow. "That's so? You see where the driver went?" The old man scratched his chin. "Drove off down the hill. Never came back." "Do you know his name?" He shook his head. "Didn't say much. Polite, though. We're a weird watch." Looked like he was in a hurry. Tyrese's eyes dropped to his own wrist. "Thanks," he murmured. The man tilted his head. "Why you asking, anyway?" Tyrese hesitated. "I think he gave me something he shouldn't have." Then, he turned and walked away, the ticking in his ears growing louder with each step. By the time Monday morning rolled around, Tyrese was back in school, but his mind was somewhere else. He couldn't stop thinking about the old man's words. "You ain't the first." What did that mean? Had others been given the same watch? Or had Mr. Landon handed out other strange gifts to other kids? Tyrese didn't know. But he did know one thing. Things were still changing around him. Fast. That day, in third period, Mr. Dorsey, his science teacher, announced a citywide STEM competition sponsored by a tech company downtown. They'd chosen 4 students from Tyrese's school to participate. His name was on the list. He hadn't signed up. When he asked Mr. Dorsey about it after class, the teacher smiled. "You've got a sharp mind, Tyrese. Your name was recommended." "By who?" Mr. Dorsey shrugged. "Didn't say. Probably one of the district counselors or someone from the foundation. You've got a good rep going these days." Tyrese smiled weakly, thanked him, and walked out into the hallway. His good rep hadn't existed 2 weeks ago. But now, somehow, doors were opening that he didn't even know existed. Still, something about it all made him uneasy. That night, he sat at the dinner table across from his mom, pushing vegetables around his plate. She watched him for a while before asking, "You okay, baby?" Tyrese nodded. "Yeah, just tired." "From all the good fortune?" she asked with a small smile. He looked up at her. "You don't think it's weird? That it's all just happening?" She leaned forward. "I think God opens doors when we least expect it. I think you've worked hard and been patient. Maybe it's just your time." "Maybe," he said quietly. But even as he said it, he felt the weight of the watch pressing against his wrist. Later that night, he lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His mom had fallen asleep watching one of her favorite dramas on the couch. The hum of the fridge and the distant bark of a dog outside filled the silence. He turned his wrist toward the moonlight and stared at the watch face. It ticked calmly, steadily. He closed his eyes, and the dream returned. This time, it was clearer. A long hallway. Mr. Landon walking quickly, glancing over his shoulder. Papers clutched in his hand. Then, a door slamming shut. A gold watch flashing under harsh lights. A briefcase dropped on the floor. Then sirens. Tyrese sat up in bed, breathing fast. It was just a dream. But why did it feel like a memory? And why was he seeing things he couldn't possibly know? The next morning, before school, he told himself he'd leave it alone. He wouldn't look up Mr. Landon again. He wouldn't chase after dreams. But at lunch, he found himself opening the school library's dusty computer and typing in Thomas Landon Ponzi allegations again. This time, a different link caught his eye. A forum, not news. A post from someone calling themselves W. Price. It read, "If anyone's still following the Landon mess, ask what happened to the original investor kids. Ask about the scholarships. Ask about the watch. Some of us never stopped looking." Tyrese's pulse quickened. The watch. He clicked the username. No other posts. No contact info. But now he knew he wasn't imagining it. Someone else out there knew about this watch. He leaned back in his chair, trying to process it. At home that evening, he waited until his mom had gone to bed. Then he opened the old shoebox he kept under his bed and placed the watch inside. For the first time in over a week, he slid it off his wrist and let it go silent. He needed space from it. That night, his sleep was dreamless. The next morning, things were different. A bus breakdown made him late to school. His name was removed from the STEM list. Apparently, one of the other students' parents had called and complained. And the email about the St. Mark's scholarship tour? Canceled. Funding had been reallocated. Tyrese didn't say anything about the watch. But he felt it. Like something had disconnected. That evening, he sat on the steps outside his building, the shoebox beside him, unopened. "You're quiet," came a voice. He turned to see Mr. Lewis, the retired postman who lived on the second floor. Tyrese shrugged. Thinking. Mr. Lewis nodded, settling on the step beside him. "You don't usually sit still this long. You feeling all right? Ever think life can change too fast?" Tyrese asked. "All the time," Mr. Lewis said. "Especially when I was your age. One year, I was scraping coins for lunch. The next, I had 3 job offers and no idea who to trust. Yep, I learned to follow my gut, even when it made no sense." Tyrese looked at the box beside him. What if something starts going right only when you have it, and everything falls apart when you don't? Mr. Lewis gave him a sideways glance. Sounds like a dangerous kind of luck. Tyrese didn't respond. He didn't need to. That night, he slept with the box beside his pillow, but he didn't open it. Something was happening, and he wasn't sure if it was luck or a test. Tyrese woke up to rain tapping on his window. Gray clouds blanketed the sky, and for the first time in weeks, the city felt normal again. The watch remained in the shoebox, untouched. Still, his thoughts refused to settle. After school, Tyrese skipped his usual routine. He took the long bus ride to the library downtown, the one with the archive section, old microfilms, and silence that felt heavier than most places. If he was going to understand who Mr. Landon really was, this was the place to start. He headed straight to the computer terminal, fingers typing fast. He searched for Thomas Landon and filtered results by year. Most of the articles were dry business jargon, corporate filings, financial talks, awards. But one headline caught his eye from nearly 20 years ago. Local businessman accused of defrauding educational investors, millions missing. Tyrese clicked. It was an archived piece from the Sentinel, dated back to 2006. The article painted a different picture than the calm man with the flat tire. Landon had been CEO of a nonprofit scholarship trust. His pitch was brilliant. Invest money into a special education fund that would grow over time, allowing underprivileged kids to attend elite schools without debt. Donations came pouring in. Celebrities, CEOs, even churches got involved. But it all collapsed. The money was gone. The scholarships never materialized. No one could prove where the funds had gone, but Landon had quietly stepped away before any charges stuck. What the article didn't explain was how Landon had avoided prosecution. Tyrese scribbled down names, attorneys, foundations, former donors. One name in particular stood out, Clarence Wilkins. Described as a whistleblower and former assistant at the trust. Tyrese flipped through the paper's archives and found another article. Wilkins speaks out. It was all a lie. The quote haunted him. Wilkins claimed the kids used in the promotional materials never received a dime. He gave out watches, he said, like they were golden tickets. Said they'd be lucky now. But luck doesn't feed a family. Tyrese sat back in his chair, stunned. He had one of those watches. It wasn't magic. It wasn't coincidence. It was part of a con. Back on the bus, Tyrese kept the shoebox on his lap. The city blurred past the windows, but his mind was clear. He knew he had to do something, but he wasn't sure what. Tell someone? Give the watch back? Throw it away? When he stepped off the bus, someone was waiting. Tyrese Jackson? He froze. The man wore a dark coat and carried a briefcase. Early 40s, clean-cut, but his eyes were sharp. Who's asking? Tyrese said, backing up slightly. The man pulled out a badge. My name's Everett Price. Private investigator. You've been looking into Mr. Landon. Tyrese stiffened. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not here to accuse you, Price said calmly. I'm here to talk. He gestured toward a bench across the street. You found the name Clarence Wilkins, right? You read about the watches. Tyrese nodded slowly. I wrote that forum post you saw. W. Price. I've been tracking Landon for years. Tyrese followed him across the street and sat down, still gripping the box tightly. Why? Why does this matter so much? Because, Price said, leaning forward, you're not the only kid who's had this happen. I've interviewed 4 people who got those watches when they were young. 1 ended up homeless. 1 overdosed. 2 just disappeared off the grid. Tyrese's mouth went dry. But it helped me. I got offers. I got noticed. And when you took it off? Price asked. Tyrese hesitated. Yeah, Price said. That's the catch. You're not the only one. The pattern is the same. Lives change fast, as long as the watch is on their wrist. But it's not real. It's manipulated. Connections. Pull. Landon still has influence in shadowy corners. But why give me the watch? Tyrese asked. Why me? I think he's trying to erase his guilt. Or maybe he wants something more. He watches them, people like you. Maybe he believes he's fixing what he broke. Tyrese looked down at the box in his lap. So what now? That's your call, Price said. You can keep it. Ride the wave. See how far it goes. Or you can walk away. Maybe even help me expose what he's really doing. Tyrese thought of his mom, her tired smile, how proud she looked lately. He thought of Mr. Lewis's advice. Sounds like a dangerous kind of luck. He looked at the watch. Then back at Price. I want the truth, he said. Price nodded. Then let's start with a visit. Clarence Wilkins is still alive. Lives 2 cities over. You up for a road trip? Tyrese glanced at the box, then tucked it in his backpack. I'm ready. The drive to Eastwood took nearly 3 hours. Tyrese watched the trees blur by, hands clenched in his lap. Everett Price didn't say much. He just focused on the road, his jaw tight, like he'd made this trip more times than he cared to count. They pulled into a quiet neighborhood that looked tired but lived in. Paint peeling on fences. Lawns uncut. Still, it felt real, honest in a way that made Tyrese feel more grounded than he had in weeks. Wilkins lives just up there, Price said, nodding toward a small 1-story house with faded green shutters. He doesn't trust easily. But he's agreed to talk. Tyrese followed Price up the walkway, heart pounding. The door opened before they even knocked. Clarence Wilkins was older than Tyrese expected. Gray hair, deep wrinkles, but sharp eyes. He wore a plain sweater and loose jeans, but his presence was solid, like someone who had nothing to prove. "You're the kid?" Wilkins asked. Tyrese nodded. "Tyrese Jackson." Wilkins glanced at Price. "You finally brought me one." "Huh?" They stepped inside. The living room was modest, stacks of old newspapers, a TV turned low in the corner, shelves filled with books, and a few dusty awards. On the coffee table sat an old photograph, a younger Wilkins standing next to a suited Thomas Landon. They were smiling. Partners. Believers in something bigger. "I was his right-hand man," Wilkins said, settling into his recliner. "Landon had the charm. I had the numbers. We started the trust with real dreams. Thought we were going to change lives." Tyrese sat across from him, his backpack resting at his feet. "What happened?" he asked. "Ambition happened," Wilkins said, voice low. Donations poured in. "At first, we did good, gave out scholarships, helped real kids. But Landon wanted more. Bigger exposure, more investors. That's when the lucky watches started." Tyrese leaned in. "What were they for?" Wilkins chuckled bitterly. "That was Landon's twist. He'd meet a promising kid, usually from a tough background, and give them a watch, said it was symbolic. But really, he was testing a theory." "What kind of theory?" "That success could be engineered. That if you controlled the right people, made the right introductions, you could make anyone look gifted." He used his network to pull strings. Interviews. Mentors. Media. The kid thought it was luck, but it was all designed. Tyrese's skin prickled. "Why?" he asked. "Because it was good press. Lucky Watch turns poor kid into Ivy League scholar. Makes donors feel magical. But the truth? The kid was a puppet." Tyrese opened his bag and pulled out the box. He lifted the watch gently, placing it on the table between them. Wilkins stared at it for a long moment. "That's one of the originals," he murmured. "There were only 20. What happened to the others?" Tyrese asked. Wilkins sighed. "Most of the kids lost their way. When the help stopped coming, so did the success. One joined a gang. One ended up in jail. Another just disappeared. I tried warning people. Landon spun it as life taking its course. Said he was only giving opportunity, not control." Tyrese looked down. "But it felt real. Good things happened to me. Scholarships. Meetings. People treated me different." "I believe that," Wilkins said gently. "But did you change? Or did the world just open doors for you?" Tyrese didn't answer. Price leaned forward. "We want to expose him. Show the public how deep this manipulation went. But we need someone who's lived it. Someone they'll listen to." Wilkins added, "I kept records. Notebooks. Emails. Names. They're in storage. If you're serious, Tyrese, I'll give them to you. But once you go down this road, you can't turn back." Tyrese swallowed. "If I say yes, what happens to everything I've been offered? The scholarships? The internships?" "They might vanish," Price said flatly. "Because they weren't earned the way you thought. They were placed. Like chess pieces." Wilkins added, "Or maybe you'll find your own way. Without the watch. Without the illusion." Tyrese stared at the object on the table. It looked ordinary now. Just metal and leather. No glow. No hum of magic. Just a trick of influence. He thought of his mom. Of the nights she worked late. Of how proud she was. Would she still be proud if it all disappeared? Or would she be prouder if he stood up for the truth? "I'll do it," he said quietly. Wilkins smiled. Not a happy smile, more like relief. "I'll get the files." As Wilkins disappeared into the back, Tyrese reached for the watch one last time. He held it in his palm, then slowly closed the lid of the box. He wouldn't be needing it anymore. Tyrese sat in the back of the auditorium, knees bouncing as the murmurs of the crowd filled the air. The event was one of those black-tie fundraising galas, champagne flutes, slick lighting, and jazz humming through hidden speakers. Tonight's spotlight was on the Landon Foundation, celebrating a decade of transformative impact. Thomas Landon stood near the stage, shaking hands, laughing, posing for pictures beneath a banner that read "Building Futures Through Belief." To most people, he was a visionary, a man who turned hope into action. Tyrese saw something else now. Next to him, Everett Price scanned the room while Wilkins flipped through a small folder. It was all here, detailed timelines, names of beneficiaries, donations linked to stage successes, behind-the-scenes deals. Wilkins even had copies of memos where Landon referred to the kids as assets. Tyrese had read the files 3 times. They made his stomach turn. The plan was simple. During the closing remarks, Tyrese would take the stage and speak. No accusations. Just the truth, his truth. Enough to start a conversation. Enough to crack the mask. The moment came faster than expected. And now, the host announced, we're proud to introduce one of our rising stars. A student who embodies what this foundation stands for, Mr. Tyrese Jackson. Applause. Spotlights. A wave of nausea. Tyrese stepped up. The stage lights blinded him at first. He adjusted the mic, cleared his throat. Thank you, he began, voice shaking slightly. This foundation has done a lot for me. I've been offered things I never imagined. Tutors, scholarships, mentors. I'm grateful for every opportunity. He paused. In the second row, Landon smiled proudly, arms crossed like a man soaking in his own success. But I've learned something recently, Tyrese continued. Something that made me ask myself a hard question. If the road to success is being paved for you without your knowledge, are you really walking it? The room shifted. The applause faded into confused murmurs. I thought the watch Mr. Landon gave me brought me luck. But it turns out that luck came from a very carefully orchestrated system. One that chose who to help, how to help them, and when to step back. Not because of who we were, but because of how good our stories made the foundation look. Landon's smile had vanished. He stood now slowly. I'm not saying I didn't benefit, Tyrese said. But I'm not okay with pretending it was all magic. Because there are kids out there, just like me, who never got picked. Not because they weren't smart or hardworking, but because they didn't get a watch. Dead silence. I don't want to be someone's symbol anymore. I want to earn my place honestly. And I want every kid out there to know. You don't need someone pulling strings to matter. He stepped back from the mic, chest rising and falling like he'd just run a marathon. Landon stepped forward, clearly rattled. Tyrese, he said into the mic with a forced chuckle, what an impassioned speech. Though I think we might have some confusion about the foundation's methods. But a voice from the back cut through. I've got the records to prove it, Clarence Wilkins said, holding up a thick binder. I kept everything. Gasps. Flashes from cameras. Movement among the press. Everett Price stood beside him, his badge clipped to his belt. The next minutes blurred. Security. Reporters swarming. Landon stepping back, face pale. The illusion cracking, piece by piece. Tyrese slipped out a side door and found a bench beneath the stars. He sat there, watching the sky. It felt colder now, but honest. A moment later, someone joined him. It was his mom. I saw the live stream, she said softly. Didn't know you were doing all that. Tyrese nodded, eyes still on the stars. She nudged his arm. I'm proud of you. Not because of the scholarships. Not because of some watch. But because you told the truth. That takes guts. Tyrese let out a shaky breath. I was scared. You did it anyway, she said. They sat in silence for a while, until she stood. Now come on, she smiled. Let's get some pie. You earned it. Tyrese stood, slipping his hand into his pocket. He pulled out the watch, still ticking, still polished. Then, quietly, he placed it on the bench. He didn't need it anymore. He had his own time now.